Someone has said that we certainly don't have holy families the way that the Holy Family does. Our family can't quite be holy in the same way because in the Holy Family, the mother was a virgin and the son was the Son of God. So that's kind of humorous. I could have gotten a little laugh, right? And so it's a good point. The Holy Family, our families are not going to be holy in the same way that Jesus and Mary and Joseph were holy. And yet our families are holy in another way. And so if we look at the stories of the Holy Family in the scriptures, what we find is really interesting. Every single time, every single scene, there is tension and there is struggle. So in our gospel this morning, what does, after not finding Jesus for 3 days, what does his mother say to him? Why have you done this to us? We had great anxiety. You caused us great anxiety. That's the Holy Family. And what is that? That's tension. That's irritation of a mother, and that's tension, and that's the struggle of the whole, right in the heart of the Holy Family. And if we look at later in Jesus' life, we look at the wedding feast of Cana that will come later. What do we see there? Jesus' mother tells him look, we're running out of wine here. And Jesus says, woman, not mom, woman, what have I to do with you? You know what that is? That's called tension in the family. And then later in the Gospels, when Jesus has started his ministry, he's given up being a carpenter, following his father in his father's job, which is kind of scandalous. And his family, and he's running around preaching, and his family his extended family thinks that he's maybe lost his mind. They show up at one of the places where he's preaching, and they tell him, look, your family's outside waiting to take you away. And Jesus says, who is my mother? Who are my brothers and my sisters? And that's called tension in the family. And so if we look at every single instance of the Holy Family in the Gospels, what we're going to see is some tension and a struggle, because there's always two things going on at the same time. There is his natural family, and then there's the family that Jesus is starting, which is a spiritual family, which is the family of all people, the people of God everywhere. Jesus is starting a new spiritual family. And these two families come into tension. Now, the spiritual family of Jesus doesn't wipe out his family. It says right there, he was obedient to them. He went home and he was part of his family, and he grew up and learned how to be part of that family. But at the same time, he was always working for the brand new family of all the people of God everywhere that he was starting. So what we see in Jesus' family, what we see in the Holy Family, it's holy in a way that our families won't be, but in the one way, it's the same as our families. There was always some tension. There was always some give and take. There was always some back and forth. There was always some struggle. And so one of the things that, a very strange thing about trying to be a religious person is, one of the things that we find is that we can get very disappointed in God. This is one of the things that people who work in spirituality find all the time, that people can get disappointed in God because what can happen is we can say, well, I would really like to have a really strong spiritual experience and a real strong sense of God that I couldn't possibly, I couldn't possibly doubt it. It was so strong that it was just very convincing. I wouldn't doubt it. And then that person has an experience of God and they're disappointed. Why are they disappointed in God? It's because they thought that if they had that experience of God, all the tension in their life would go away. All the struggle would go away. If they could just really experience of God, there'd be no more struggle. And then they find out that when we have an experience of God, actually the struggle can get worse. It can get harder. Because once we've had a clear sense of an experience with God, well, then the lines between good and evil are brighter. They're more clear. Then the struggle is actually turned up a little bit. And we have to learn to have the grace to live at a higher level of struggle between good and bad, because now we know it much more clearly. And so people can be very disappointed in their experience of God because it doesn't take away the struggle. Sometimes it makes it even stronger. And then we find that God's not Santa Claus. So many people think that God is like Santa Claus. We find out that God doesn't save us from life. God saves us in life. And life, and the spiritual life, is always at heart a back and forth and a give and take and a struggle. And so some people can get very disappointed in God, but that is why we must love our families, because our real families are holy in their own ways. And how are they so holy? Well, because our families, where's the normal place in our lives that we have a strong experience of God, a strong experience of the divine and the human coming together? Where is the normal place that we experience the divine in our human lives? In the plain old average everyday experiences of our lives. We think that what we want is some mountaintop experience where we'll be lifted out of life and we can like put our spiritual feet up and we can just cruise through life because we've had this deep experience of God. And no, that's not where we experience the divine. Maybe once in a while, a couple of times in our lives. But the normal place we experience the divine life of God is in this every single moment of the everyday, ordinary lives that we live. And that is so often mainly in the family. And certainly it starts out that way. It is in our lives. The ordinary way that we discover that we experience the divine is in our families, in the everyday stuff. And why is that? Why would that be the normal way that we experience the divine? Because that is where we need the gifts of the Spirit. Isn't that where the gifts of Spirit hold up our own powers at a higher level than our own? Because that's where we need patience. It's where we need kindness. It's where we need love. It's where we need self-control. It's where we need faith and hope and love. It's where we need our love to see clearly what are the true values that are worth struggling and living for. It's where we see, it's where we get the guts in our love, the gift of God's love, which with guts in our love, so that we don't just have feelings, but we actually do something about it. It's where we have the gift of God's hope that gives us the confidence that our desires, the things could be better. They could get better. It gives us confidence in those desires. We wake up one morning and we don't think we can go on. And we just think we just want to sit in bed and drink and eat bonbons and stream Netflix. And then somehow we find the grace to get up and do it and go at it again, even in the face of failure and difficulty. That's where we have the normal experience of the divine, right in our families, where we need the grace of God and the gifts of the Spirit. And why is it that the divine then is experienced mostly in the everyday? It's because caring has a double effect. And families are all about caring is more important than anything. When it comes to a family, caring is more important than anything. But caring always has a double effect. When we care for someone or some situation, it helps the situation, but it also makes us at the same time a more caring person. That's the most wonderful thing about caring, is the double effect. And I think it's one of the reasons that parents get their children a little dog or a cat. And right away, they have to learn to start caring for something. And what will it do for them? It'll help the dog, but it'll make them a more caring person. And that's true of us as well. There's always a double effect to care. And when we are part of our families and engaged in the caring of those families, we not only make the family better, It makes us better. Why is it that the normal way that we experience the divine is in the average everyday things of our families? It's because this is one of the great secrets of life, that usually it takes us, we have to get some years, we have to become some veterans of life. We have to get some years behind us before we realize this secret of life, that we need somebody to be good for. We are not very good people on our own when it's just about us. The truth is, we are much better people when we start having somebody to be good for. We need somebody to be good for. You could ask any priest, and they will tell you, if they got in an ounce of honesty, that they are a vastly better person because they have to be good for people than they would be if they didn't. We need people to be good for, and that's one of the things our families always do for us. And so let's honor families. Let's honor our own families on this Feast of the Holy Family. Let's honor our own families in the way that they are holy, not in exactly the way that the Holy Family was, but in our own form of holiness, which is always going to be a back and forth and a give and take and a struggle as we make caring more important than anything, so that the caring also helps our families, but it helps us. And is that we have people to be good for. And as we find other families, as we find our church families, and as we pray and work for honoring all of the families of the world, as Sister Phyllis said, and as our introduction. So let's come here to this table and receive holy food so that we can live more sacred family lives, so that we can make caring more important than anything. And we can find those people that we need to be good for. We spend our lives wondering, what do I need to do in life? What do I need to do? What does God want me to do? And sometimes what God is trying to get us to do is say, who are my people? Who are the people that I need to serve and be a good person for?